Okay, so today we're diving into some seriously strange stuff happening on this island off the coast of Costa Rica. And get this, what starts as like a totally normal thing, a kid getting bitten by a lizard, right?
Mm.
Turns into this whole much bigger, kind of messed up situation.
Yeah, we're talking Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton here.
Hmm.
And I mean, lots of people know the basic idea, but we're going to really dig deep into the specifics, see how these seemingly random things are all connected, and, well, what kind of scary truth they point to.
Exactly. It's like a shortcut, but with all the good info.
Yeah.
So let's start with that, like seemingly small thing on the beach, right? We got Tina Bowman, an American girl on vacation in Costa Rica. She's walking on the beach, gets bitten by a little lizard, and her parents, of course, take her to a clinic in Punta Arenas.
Makes sense.
Right. And see, this is where things get wild. You've got this local health scare, this freaky animal attack we'll get to, and this discovery of dinosaur bones, like thousands of miles away, all sort of happening at the same time. Like early hints of this, like much larger, more dangerous picture we need to figure out.
At the clinic, Tina's checked out by Dr. Cruz, who thinks she's doing okay. But then Marty Gutierrez, he's the one who says, hey, that's a common basilisk amaratus, the lizard. And he says, she'll be fine in about 12 hours with some meds. Like, no big deal.
And here's the thing. The lab at that clinic, the Clinic of Santa Maria, they back them up, they run tests, and yep, it's a harmless basilisk. So you'd think end of story, right? But hold on, at almost the same time, we hear about something crazy happening on a different beach, Cabo
Oh,
Blanco.
yeah. On that beach, a woman named Elena sees something way more intense. We're talking small lizards, yeah, but with blood all over their faces. And they're attacking a baby. It totally changes things. Makes you think, maybe not all these lizards are so harmless after all.
And the mystery gets even deeper with Tina Bowman's drawing of the lizard that bit her. It ends up with Alice Levin at the Tropical Diseases Laboratory, and she takes one look and is like, whoa, this isn't a regular lizard. And she's pointing out the big head, long neck, hind legs, thick tail, and she's convinced it's a dinosaur. Hold up. From a simple lizard bite to a dinosaur based on a kid's drawing. That's insane. What was the reaction to that?
Yeah, it's a total curveball. It shifts everything, right? We go from this like little medical thing to the possibility of running into a creature that's supposed to be extinct for millions of years. Then, on top of that, we meet paleontologist Alan Grant and his team out in Montana. They just dug up the jawbone of, get this, a 79-million-year-old baby meat-eating dinosaur. So within a short time, we've got both scientific proof of ancient dinosaur life and a modern-day encounter. It really sets the stage for this question. What happens when the idea of bringing dinosaurs back to life becomes real, not just a theory, but because of business, like we'll see with Hammond and Ingen? These two seemingly unconnected things, the kid's drawing in Costa Rica and this fossil find in Montana, are the tiny seeds of this much larger story we're getting into.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting because these separate things start to come together. Grant's working in Montana, right, doing his dinosaur research, and it gets the attention of this guy Morris from an environmental agency. And Morris starts asking Grant some pretty specific questions about the money he's been getting from the Hammond Foundation.
Right. And Grant's first impression of John Hammond, the guy behind the foundation, is pretty telling. He sees him as this, like, older, kind of eccentric, but definitely passionate dinosaur enthusiast. The classic rich guy with a pet project.
Right, but even from the beginning, with Hammond's intense focus and all the secrecy, like, weren't there red flags Grant might have missed? Or do we just, I don't know, see things differently when someone is rich and excited about something?
I mean, that's a good question. And then Morris brings up another player, InGen, this kind of shady organization also connected to Hammond. They make this weird request to Grant. They want him to write a paper about, specifically, what young dinosaurs eat. Supposedly, it's for a children's museum they're planning.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but this request just leads to all these frustrating back and forths with a guy named Gennaro, the one supposedly in charge of this museum. Grant finds him a total pain, constantly calling with what seemed like meaningless questions at all hours. Finally, Grant's so fed up, he just scraps the whole museum project.
That's rough.
Yeah, it is. And this is when Morris's suspicions about Hammond really start to take shape. He tells Grant he thinks Hammond might be playing fast and loose with the law, mentioning possible dinosaur dig sites up north, strange amber purchases, and most importantly, an island in Costa Rica. So see how these little pieces are starting to form a picture.
Oh, yeah, definitely starting to see it.
Right. And then, to make things even more mysterious, Morris mentions the Office of Technology Transfer, or OTT. They got worried when they saw InGen shipping this really powerful genetic engineering equipment, hood sequencers, to be exact, to their island in Costa Rica. And the fact that InGen was being all secretive about it raised a lot of red flags.
So what's the big deal with these hood sequencers?
Well, they're basically the tech you need to read and mess with DNA, like the stuff needed to, bring dinosaurs back to life. And the OTT's issue was that InGen claimed it was just an internal transfer within their company. That way they could skip the stricter rules on exporting sensitive stuff. Morris also points out that Costa Rica has, let's say, more relaxed rules, which makes it attractive for these kinds of activities, but also way more risky. I mean, think about it. The Office of Technology Transfer is a government group. They're in charge of making sure sensitive technology doesn't just walk out of the country. So when InGen labels this shipment as an internal transfer, it makes them suspicious. Like, what are they hiding?
Yeah.
It highlights its secrecy and, honestly, the potential danger of what they're doing.
Totally. And then Morris straight up asks Grant if InGen could use his report on baby dinosaur diets for something besides a museum, like something shady. Grant, almost predicting what's going to happen, jokingly says they could use it to figure out how to feed a baby hadrosaur. Little did he know.
Right. And meanwhile, back in Montana, we've got Ellie Sadler, Grant's colleague, and she is freaking out, in a good way. She might have found a velociraptor skeleton.
Yeah.
And the best part is, it's got a baby skeleton with it. This is exactly what Grant's always wanted to study, how meat-eating dinosaurs raise their young. It was the next step after all his work on plant eaters.
It's like the universe is setting things up,
Right. And then, bam.
Yeah.
A fax rise from InGen, straight to Grant and Ellie. It's got blueprints, full-on plans for something called the Island Nubler Resort Guest Facilities. Specifically, a safari lodge. And guess who sent it? John Hammond himself.
No way.
Yeah, and Grant's just lost. This guy's a paleontologist, right? He's deep in the world of fossils and ancient ecosystems, and suddenly he's got plans for a resort. It shows how out of touch he is with Hammond's real intentions.
It's important to remember, too, that back then, paleontology wasn't as advanced as people might think. Grant even thinks about how they're still waiting for stuff like 3D imaging of fossils without having to dig them up. Their work is still very hands-on.
Yes, exactly. Which makes InGen's supposed achievement, bringing dinosaurs back to life, even more insane. I mean, it's way beyond what paleontologists could do back then.
Yeah.
And speaking of dinosaurs, Grant's work is challenging the whole slow, cold-blooded reptile image. He's finding more evidence of active, bird-like behavior. These things were agile and dynamic, which people often forget.
Totally. And just as things are starting to click, we see Gennaro again. This time he's on a tense phone call with someone named Ross talking about a big investment. And the way he talks about Hammond, super dismissive. Like, there's some power struggle going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And then, boom, Gennaro shows up at Isla Nublar himself.
Yeah.
Officially, he's there to check if the park's ready for visitors.
Yeah.
He sees the hotel they built and, more importantly, the animals. Remember, they were aiming for about 12 different species.
That's a lot.
Right. And Hammond, classic Hammond, starts explaining how the park works. He's all about automation, keeping the staff small to save money. But we'll see how that over-reliance on technology backfires big time.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And then there's the secrecy. Hammond's kept everything about the island super hush-hush. He wants to blow everyone away at the opening. But all this secrecy also means nobody from the outside is really checking up on him, which is a huge risk given what he's doing.
Definitely a recipe for disaster. Now, let's switch gears to this other company, Biosyn Corporation. They've got this guy named Dodgson who is really interested in InGen's work. But he wants more than just bacteria DNA. He's after frozen dinosaur embryos. And to get them, he needs an InGen employee to go rogue, steal the embryos, and bypass all their security.
Seriously shady stuff.
Right. And Dodgson actually finds an InGen employee willing to do it. They plan this whole secret meeting at the east dock of the island on a Friday night, a quieter, less watched dock. They even talk about how the island and InGen headquarters are constantly chatting over the radio, which just shows how risky this whole operation is.
Very risky. And the InGen employee sounds totally confident, like they've got this. So now we've got this whole betrayal thing set up that could blow everything up.
Let's talk about high stakes. And then we get a new perspective. Ian Malcolm, a mathematician. Gennaro invited him to the island, and Malcolm basically says, yeah, Hammond's got a big problem. He says the whole island is doomed to fail, that he predicted this from the start.
Well, he's not wrong.
No, he's not. And his whole reasoning is based on chaos theory, not just randomness, but understanding these super complex, unpredictable systems, like the kind that normal physics can't always predict. Malcolm's point is that trying to control something as wild as resurrected dinosaurs, especially on a contained island, is impossible. No matter how much you plan, it's gonna break down eventually.
Makes sense. And now we're on the flight to Costa Rica with Grant and Sadler. The pilot mentions all the deforestation and points out the Cabo Blanco Preserve, the same place where Elena saw those creepy lizard attacks. It's like everything is connected, even the landscape.
It's all coming full circle.
Exactly. And during the flight, Grant and Sattler are chatting about how our understanding of dinosaurs has changed. They talk about all the evidence that suggests they were warm-blooded. Four-chambered hearts, their tracks that show speed and agility, even fossils found way up in the Arctic. Grant's own research on dinosaur group behavior backs this up, too.
So, not the slow, lumbering creatures we used to imagine.
Whoop, much more active and, frankly, way more potentially dangerous. And then Grant asks this crucial question: where did InGen even get the dinosaur DNA from? He mentions the whole debate about cloning extinct animals, and you could get good DNA from fossils, which is really tough because DNA breaks down over millions of years.
Yeah, it's like trying to find a perfectly preserved needle in a massive haystack.
Pretty much. As they get closer to the island, Sattler notices some things about the lodge plans that are, well, not your average tropical resort features. Think smaller windows made of super strong glass, set in steel frames, heavy steel doors, and this huge fence around the whole place. It's like they're expecting something way more dangerous than your typical wild animal.
Definitely not your average getaway. And when they arrive, they're greeted by Hammond, along with Gennaro and two kids, Tim and Lex Murphy, Hammond's grandkids. And Gennaro, ever the voice of reason, is like, are we sure about putting people, especially kids, in potential danger? But Hammond just brushes it off, excited to show off his creation. Maybe a little too excited.
Yeah, a bit blinded by his ambition, for sure. And then we see Grant talking to Tim, one of the grandkids. Turns out Kim knows a lot about dinosaurs. He even corrects a museum guard who's wrong about how many bones are in a T-Rex's tail. It just shows how much people, especially kids, are fascinated by these creatures.
Kids and their dinosaurs, right. But it's also kind of sweet.
It is. And then there's Ed Regis, part of the tour group. He's trying to reassure everyone that the park's totally safe, downplaying any warning signs. He also mentions they've only got 20 people running the whole resort, which again shows how much Hammond depends on automation. But it also makes you wonder, what happens if something goes wrong?
Uh-oh. Foreshadowing much.
Maybe a little. Then we see Dennis Nedry, the programmer, hired to manage the park's crazy computer system. He's totally overwhelmed by how much data there is, and he starts questioning what it's all really for. When he asks his colleague Barney about it, Barney suggests it's probably for some bioengineering company which connects InGen to this whole high-tech genetic stuff.
More pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. And the tour moves on to the hatchery. Dr. Wu explains how they've created this special environment, warm, humid, lots of oxygen, to mimic the Jurassic period. They've basically recreated a prehistoric world, which just shows how ambitious and maybe arrogant this whole project is.
It's like they're playing God, but with dinosaurs.
Right. And then Dr. Wu talks about these little carnivorous dinosaurs they made called Compsognathus, nickname, Compieces. They're supposed to be scavengers, eating animal waste to prevent disease. But Malcolm, always the skeptic, is like, hold on, what if these things escape? Even small meat-eating dinosaurs could be a big problem if they start breeding and spreading.
Yeah, that's not a good thought.
No, it's not. And Tim, proving he knows his stuff, points out that Compsognathus was a pack hunter, like Deinonychus, which Grant explains is now considered a type of velociraptor. Grant also mentions that while the fossil proof for pack hunting in velociraptors is mostly guesswork, their bodies definitely suggest they could do it.
So even more dangerous than we thought.
Exactly. And as the group continues the tour, they pass by this noisy generator shed. It's a big concrete building with a power plant that goes 2 floors underground. That just shows how much power they need to keep this whole artificial ecosystem running.
So much for being eco-friendly.
Right. And then the tour takes a dark turn. They come across 5 velociraptors at the fence of their enclosure. And the fence is messed up, dented, and even burnt. A worker casually mentions that the raptors attack the fence all the time. It's a clear sign of how aggressive and potentially deadly these things are.
Definitely not the kind of animal you want breaking loose.
No kidding. And Malcolm, always on point, asks straight up if the velociraptor is really a good idea for this park. Grant's like, nope, definitely dangerous. He even says the way they're attacking the fence, all coordinated, is exactly what the fossil record suggests. Like, these things could take down huge prey by working together.
Oh man, not what you want to hear when you're on a dinosaur island.
Definitely not. And then we get this revealing conversation between Dr. Wu and Hammond about what people expect dinosaurs to be like versus what they're actually like. Wu's point is that the whole entertainment thing focuses on those expectations, even if they're totally wrong.
Yeah.
Hammond seems more worried about making a good show than being scientifically accurate.
Sounds about right for him.
Yeah, priorities, right.
Yes.
Hammond then talks about how he hired Dr. Wu after another geneticist, Atherton, died. He even says that working for a company like InGen pays way more than working in academia. It just shows how much money is driving this whole thing and how that can, mess with scientific integrity.
Yeah, when money talks, science sometimes walks a crooked line.
Sadly true. So Arnold, one of the park's main guys, explains that Jurassic Park will open in stages. First, the basic dinosaur tour. Then later, they'll add more elaborate rides and stuff. Grant's not comfortable with this whole idea of dinosaurs as amusement park attractions.
I see why.
Yeah, it's kind of demeaning to these magnificent creatures.
Hmm.
Arnold then goes on about the massive computer systems they need to run the park. It controls everything life support in the hatchery, tracking all the dinosaurs. They're totally dependent on this tech, which, as we know, is a big problem waiting to happen.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Then Ed Regis excitedly announces the electric land cruisers, all about how they're eco-friendly and how eventually people will be able to drive among the dinosaurs. But he also makes sure everyone knows they're being listened to in the cars.
Big Brother is watching, even in Jurassic Park.
Always listening.
What?
And this makes Gennaro say he needs to have a serious, private conversation with someone. There's definitely tension building, and important stuff needs to be discussed away from Hammond.
Makes sense.
Right. And Arnold, the practical engineer, is realizing just how insanely complicated it is to manage a whole park full of real dinosaurs. It's way harder than any normal amusement park ride.
It's like trying to herd cats, but the cats are giant prehistoric predators.
Yeah, exactly. And to top it off, Arnold starts listing all these problems they've been having. Tyrannosaurs getting sick from the lagoon water, female triceratops fighting, stegosaurs with blisters and diarrhea, even breeding issues. It's clear they're struggling to keep this artificial ecosystem stable.
Not a good sign at all.
Nope. Arnold also mentions a computer program that automatically gives the dinosaurs their meds, even with alarms to stop tampering. It just shows how much technology they need just to keep these animals alive.
As much reliance on computers, what could go wrong, right?
Oh, we'll see. Meanwhile, Nidri, the programmer, is way over his head. He thought the computer problems were simple, but now he realizes he needs his entire team from Cambridge just to get started. This is where we see how important and how fragile the computer system really is.
It's all going to come crashing down, isn't it?
You know it. So the tour reaches the Tyrannosaurus Rex paddock. The audio guide gives the classic T-Rex rundown, apex predator, late arrival in dinosaur history.
Yeah.
But then the land cruiser stop and nothing. The paddock seems empty.
Oh, that's creepy. Where's the big guy?
Exactly. Everyone's on edge. And Muldoon, the game warden, starts talking about some recent incidents with the T-Rex.
Yeah.
A young one escaping, a hurt stegosaur, even having to reinforce the raptor pen because one got out. It's like the park is already falling apart.
This is not reassuring at all.
Not at all. And then Muldoon drops a bomb. He asked for real guns, like rifles and even rocket launchers, but the park management said no. They're all about the no guns policy. It seems like a safety thing, but also takes away their best defense against these dangerous dinosaurs. Muldoon even threatens to quit over it.
Wow.
Yeah, he's serious. So then they see a stegosaur that's clearly not doing well, drooping plates, weird breathing, and this nasty smell like rotting fish.
Oh, yuck.
Right. And Ellie, she's a plant expert, and she recognizes this smell.
Well,
It's like what you get from mammalian toxicity, eating those China berry or lilac berries. And the stegosaur's got all the classic symptoms: slow, blistered skin, dilated pupils. But the vet insists stegosaurs don't eat lilac bushes. So what's going on?
That's a good question. And I bet Malcolm has a theory.
Of course he does. Yeah. He immediately links the sick dinosaur to chaos theory. How these complex systems are unpredictable. He's basically saying you can't control nature completely. There will be consequences.
Words to live by, especially on a dinosaur island.
Right. Now, back in the control room, Arnold finds something seriously wrong. The computer's animal count is off. He thinks it's just a tracking error or something, but the number keeps going up.
That can't be good.
It's not. Hammond and Dr. Wu are still in denial, insisting the dinosaurs can't breed. But it's clear they're wrong.
They're clinging to their perfect little plan, even though it's falling apart.
Exactly. But Grant offers a different explanation. The loose raptors and cumpies are probably eating the eggs and babies of the bigger dinosaurs. That's why they haven't seen many young ones. Arnold is surprised by this, which shows how much they've missed in their observation.
So much for their perfect control.
Yeah, right. And after reviewing the footage, Harding confirms the stegosaur's sickness isn't familia, it was eating normally. So the mystery deepens.
This is getting intense.
Totally. Grant decides to head back to the visitor center with the kids and Malcolm. Gennaro stays with Harding and Sadler to investigate more. On the way back, Malcolm gives them a deeper dive into chaos theory. He's basically saying, sudden change is normal. Trying to force things to be linear and predictable doesn't work with nature.
Deep thoughts for a chaotic situation.
Absolutely. And then their Jeep hits a fallen tree blocking the road. Plus their radio's dead. They're stuck and isolated.
Oh, this is bad timing.
The worst. Back in the control room, things go from bad to worse. Lightning strikes the park, causing a power surge that goes straight through Nedry's modem connection and shuts down the whole system. Arnold breathes a sigh of relief when it reboots, but then he realizes Nedry's gone, and the guards sent to find him haven't come back either.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, trouble. So we switch to Nedry. He's got the stolen embryos in a shaving cream can, and he is lost in the jungle. He checks his watch, realizing he's been gone too long. He hears water and follows it, hoping it'll lead him back, but it just takes him deeper into the mess.
Lost and carrying stolen goods in a storm. Not a good combo.
Definitely not. He's got to get back to the control room, fix the system before anyone notices, then contact Dodgson to make the drop. And he has to erase his call log, too. It's a lot to juggle.
He's in deep.
Way deep. Meanwhile, Dr. Wu is thinking about Hammond. He's old, stubborn, and refusing to see how bad things are. Wu's also bothered by the evidence that dinosaurs are breeding, especially after Grant asked about using amphibian DNA, which Wu now wants to look into.
So even Wu's starting to doubt Hammond's plan.
Yeah, the cracks are showing. And then Hammond says something really strange. He's worried he won't live to see kids actually enjoying Jurassic Park. Like, that's his main concern right now, not the whole disaster unfolding around him.
That's wow. Just wow.
It is. And then Harding explains a weird thing about the T-Rex's vision. It sees perfectly well, but its eyes are like an amphibian's. They mostly detect movement. So a still car is less likely to trigger his hunting instincts.
So as long as you don't move, you're good.
Well, in theory.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't want to test it. Wu's also convinced that there are pressures on the park that Hammond isn't admitting to. Like something more than just the dinosaurs going wrong.
Definitely more to the story.
For sure. As they drive, Harding points out the river. Then he stops again, this time because of those little green cumpies, the same ones from the facts in Montana. It shows they're not just surviving, they're thriving and spreading.
Uh-oh. More mini dinos on the loose.
Exactly. And remember, Ed Regis, the guy who got left behind, he's walking back, scared out of his mind. He actually hears Lex crying for help, but he's so terrified of the T-Rex that he just keeps going, leaving the kids alone.
That's just awful.
It is. So Grant finds Lex after Regis ditched them. But their relief is short-lived. A young raptor attacks Regis, and it's not pretty. Grant grabs the kids and runs. They're in serious danger now.
This is turning into a nightmare.
Yeah, it is. And as night falls, we see those little cumpies running around on the road. They're nocturnal, and they're everywhere.
Creepy little things.
Tell me about it. Back at the lodge, Harding and Ellie are trying to talk to Muldoon over the radio. He wants to take a car and help the others who are stranded. The radio's all messed up, but they hear that Nedry's missing one. They figure out he's talking about the shaving cream can with the embryos.
So now they know about the theft.
Yep. Gennaro's hoping Grant and the kids are safe. But Hammond's still strangely calm, saying the park is made for kids. It's like he's in a different reality.
Denial at its finest.
Exactly. Then Muldoon calls in with bad news. He found Arnold in the control room, injured and unconscious. Harding's on his way to help. They still don't know where the others are, but Muldoon thinks Grant and the kids went into the park.
This is going from bad to worse.
No kidding. So Grant knows they need shelter. He tells Tim to stay with Lex while he climbs a tree to see what's around. Luckily, they're near a fence, though not the electric one.
At least a little bit of good news.
Yeah, small victories. Back in the control room, Arnold's showing Gennaro the crazy computer code. He's basically saying, this is so complex and it keeps crashing, so I have to keep going back into it to fix it.
It sounds like a nightmare for a non-programmer.
It is. And then Arnold tries to explain this thing called strange attractors in chaos theory. He uses a drop of water on his hand as an example. Like, the water moves unpredictably, but it's still within a certain area. It's like how even chaotic things have boundaries.
It's a good analogy, even if it's hard to wrap your head around in this situation.
Right. And then, another alarm. The T-Rex is out of its paddock and in the sauropod area. Muldoon's worried, but says they have to wait till daylight to do anything. Hammond's concerned about how many sauropods the T-Rex will kill, but Harding says probably just one because they're so huge.
One less dinosaur to worry about, I guess.
Yeah, grim humor, right. But then Muldoon says the tranquilizer they have is useless against the 8-ton T-Rex. And guess what? Nedry took all the bigger guns when he left. They're basically defenseless.
This is a disaster.
Total disaster. So we cut to Grant. He wakes up in a maintenance shed, having somehow slept through the night. He hears Lex giggling, which is a good sign. But then he sees the baby raptor they caught getting agitated, and he hears this weird snorting outside.
Uh-oh, something's out there.
Yeah, and it's probably not friendly. Back in the control room, Arnold says the computer's back online after a manual reboot. But all the phones are still dead. They're cut off from the outside world.
Trapped with dinosaurs and no way to call for help. Not ideal.
Not at all. And then Grant, Tim, and Lex are running for their lives from a huge herd of hadrosaurs. They find this rocky outcrop just in time, but the ground's shaking and it's super loud. They get covered in dust as the herd thunders past.
That's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. Ellie radios Arnold and Wu, telling them to wait for Grant at the lab.
At least they're trying to stick together.
Yeah. Grant searches the maintenance shed for anything useful. He finds cement, pipes, fencing, and finally 2 inflatable rafts. That's their escape plan.
Makeshift boats for a dinosaur river.
It's all they've got. So they escape the hadrosaurs, but then they're attacked by pterodactyls. One of them even grabs Let's. They fight it off and manage to get in a boat on the river.
Pterodactyls. This is getting out of control.
Way out of control. They float down the river, passing the aviary where those pterodactyls live. The river gets narrow and fast, adding to the danger. Lex throws up from the stress, but then she says, "We did it." Tim cries with relief. And then they see the T-Rex by the waterfall, tearing up a life vest.
And a reminder that they're not safe yet.
Not even close. They go behind the waterfall and find more park equipment. Grant looks for a phone, desperate to call for help. And then the T-Rex's head slowly emerges from the mud behind the waterfall, stares at them for a moment, and disappears.
Oh, that's chilling.
Super chilling. Back in the control room, Arnold announces, okay, the Rex is down. He thinks everything's back to normal, but he's wrong.
Oh, no.
He explains that the power outage shut down all the electric fences, and the backup generator wasn't strong enough to power them. Muldoon is horrified to realize the raptor fences have been off for 5 hours. And then they hear a scream. Muldoon jumps into action, giving orders.
This is not good.
Not good at all. Muldoon radios Ellie, asking how long it's been since Arnold tried to turn the power back on. Lou says 4 or 5 minutes. Muldoon's worried. Gennaro confirms he's there.
Something's about to go down.
Yeah, and it's not pretty. Gennaro enters a dark maintenance shed, stumbles over a shoe, finds a catwalk, and then he finds Arnold's body. It's not a pretty sight.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the park's over-reliance on one guy for the computer system just had deadly consequences. And Malcolm, even though he's hurt, gets into this deep conversation with Hammond. He says the whole idea of controlling nature through science is dead, along with the excuse for science to do whatever it wants and people to blindly follow. Hammond, of course, disagrees.
Classic Hammond.
Right. So Grant, Tim, and Lex are in an electric cart going through a tunnel. Grant sees animal droppings, which means the dinosaurs have been using these tunnels. Lex notices the captured velociraptors breathing hard. Grant confirms they tranquilized it to prove their breeding, something Hammond and Wu kept denying.
More proof that they were wrong.
Exactly. And then, boom, the cart comes out of the tunnel right in front of the visitor center garage. They put the raptor in a cage. Grant radios Ellie, telling her they're in the lobby. Wu can't believe they're alive. Ellie warns Grant that raptors are loose, they can open doors, and they might be in the same building.
This is getting way too close for comfort.
Tell me about it. Ellie decides to go to the maintenance building to help restore power, even though Muldoon's worried about the raptors.
That's brave of her.
Very brave. Tim and Lex are stuck waiting in the creepy, quiet lobby. Wu tells Grant to go to the maintenance building too, thinking they can lure the raptors to the lodge. He tells Grant to leave the kids in the cafeteria and turn off his radio so the raptors won't hear them.
That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, kind of a desperate plan. So Lex, being a kid, asks for a hamburger and ice cream. Grant tells Kim to stay with her in the cafeteria while he goes to the maintenance building.
Poor kids, stuck in a dinosaur-infested cafeteria.
It's not